Choosing a name for a speech is always a difficult thing. Yossi will tell you we went back and forth to try and name our sessions, to try and accurately communicate an entire wealth of ideas into one tagline. So it was with great difficulty that we chose the name for this keynote. It was called Am Yisrael Chai. And it was going to be about shaping the destiny of the Jewish people. But I find it a little bit difficult because we had no idea the irony of the title of this talk on a Sunday morning after nearly a dozen of our brothers and sisters were murdered in a synagogue. Am Yisrael Chai. What is the destiny of the Jewish people? I remember many years ago I was with a group of students on a trip with Aish in Eretz Israel. And it was exactly as you'd imagine it. A group of young men and women coming together, having a great time, after having done some great activities, and everyone's sitting around and we're all making burgers in a tent out in the middle of nowhere. And all of a sudden, all of a sudden 150 young Jews start to go quiet. That's not a normal thing. No one is talking. Everyone is looking down at their phones. It was the moment where 150 Jews all got the pings on their phone to tell them that the 3 boys that we'd been praying for 18 days were actually not missing. They'd been murdered. And it was surreal. Everything went quiet. Nobody spoke. And suddenly someone began to sing in the room, Oseh Shalom. Not in the way that it's sung at a bar mitzvah, mind you, but almost whispered. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. If God can make peace in the heavens between the various factions of good and evil, please God, make peace down here on earth. It was more of a prayer than a song. And I still remember going the next day, we couldn't do anything, we canceled all of our activities, and we went to the funeral that day. It was at the top of a mountain. There was 100,000 people there. It was so hot that they were carrying bodies out. They were body surfing people who had fainted to the ambulances. And 150 English kids who didn't speak a word of Hebrew, by the way, sat through an hour of speeches in Hebrew, in a language they didn't understand, because they felt that this was their loss. These were their people, their brothers, their sisters. After an hour, when the speeches were over, we sent them back down to the bus. We were nervous after, I think that day, 95 people fainted and had to be taken away in ambulances. But I played football back in Israel. I used to play line. You probably can't tell now. I always say rabbis are also in shape. Round is a shape. And I decided that if I had spent all that time learning how to push people, I was going to put that to good use, and I was going to make it all the way through the crowd to put my hand on their grave and say goodbye. And I did. Mushed, pushed, moved, this, that. And I was almost there. One of the most surreal things I've ever seen in my life, a grave surrounded only by young people. It's not a place for young people. But right as I almost got there was this moment of abject horror, because it was so tightly packed. And I was kind of trying to weave, use my shoulders, get in. And there was a moment where I lost my footing. And I started to fall forward. And I knew that if I actually fell, I'd be trampled to death by 100,000 feet traveling in the same direction. A moment of pure panic. But then something so beautiful happened. It's a physical manifestation of what I want to talk about today. I fell forward, but there was nowhere to fall, because I was surrounded so tightly in a Jewish hug of bodies that even as my feet left the ground and I couldn't stand by myself, I was held up by all the other Jews around me in a giant hug of love. It's not often you get to feel that way. So that's what I want to talk about today, the destiny of the Jewish people. I mentioned last night that today I was going to speak about a very special woman who passed away 3 years ago, nearly this week. And her name was Henny Machlis Alea HaShalom, more an angel than a woman. Her house was so full of people on a consistent and constant basis that it looked like and felt like you needed a shoehorn to get people in. And I remember taking a group of students there, and you're looking around, and the makeup was unbelievable. There was religious people, non-religious people, yeshiva boys, seminary girls, a guy with tattoos all over his face, whose name was not Mike Tyson. Sorry, Mike. But the maddest thing I've ever seen was sitting directly across from Rav Machlis was a priest at the Shabbos table, eating kugel. Mad. How could there be so much room in somebody's heart? How could there be so much room in somebody's home? It was as if the walls had expanded so much they just weren't there. And as I sat watching this beautiful scene, how two people, such special people, could love with all of their hearts, it struck me that I had seen this scene before. Not with my own eyes, but in our books. You see, this family, they were superhumans, but they had inherited that gene. Because before there was Henny Alea Shalom and Yibadel Haim Tovim Arukim, Mordechai Machlis, before Henny and Mordechai, there was Abraham and Sarah. We are taught by them what a Jewish home was supposed to look like. Their home, like Henny and Mordechai's, had no walls. It was open on all four sides. And the reason why they had 4 openings on each one of their sides was so that if people wanted to come to their tent, they could enter directly into their home without ever deviating from their own path. They did not need to change to find a home in the house of Abraham and Sarah. And the great-great-grandchildren of Abraham and Sarah, Henny and Mordechai, had practiced this so well that they too had abolished walls from their dictionary. They accepted and loved people as they were, and it was only after there was food in their hearts and love in their souls that Abraham and Yitzchak would talk to them, Abraham and Sarah would talk to them about a higher purpose, about a divine plan. The first shi'ur that Abraham would give them was only at the end when they would say thank you to him, and Abraham would say, why are you thanking me? I didn't make the food. It came from a higher source. Do you wonder where food comes from? But only after he'd felt, and only after he'd felt that he'd been cared for. You know, there's a famous line, and it goes, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That line is variously attributed to Teddy Roosevelt, to John Maxwell, to many, many others. And we don't actually know who said that line, and I think the reason is because we don't care who said those words. We only care who practices them. No one thinks that Henny and Mordechai wrote that phrase, and I'm sure that they didn't. They were too busy living it to sit down and figure out how to say it. So sitting there in that room with my students, watching this scene, this sea of Jews of all different types and stripes, I was looking at the living, breathing legacy, the destiny that Abraham and Sarah had laid out for their great-great-grandchildren, thousands of years later. You know, I took a group once to the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, where the forefathers are buried. And I walked in and I was telling the students who these people were. And there's this moment where I just broke into tears. I'm holding my two children, and I'm telling them who's buried right behind me, behind that wall. And I look up behind me, and up to my right is the name Yitzchak for Yitzchak Avinu, our forefather Isaac. And to my left is the name Rivka Imenu, Rebecca, our mother, his wife. And I talked to this group about how important what we have is. Torah tzivalanu Moshe. We were all taught Torah by Moshe, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. You know, Torah was taught by Moshe. It gets taught by rabbis. It gets taught by teachers. But even if you're a Jew who never sat in a yeshiva, who never took a class, Morasha, it is an inheritance to the children of Jacob. It's in there. It was inherited, bequeathed to you without a single class, without a single MP3, without a single seminary. It's part of your body, your soul, your blood. And I said to them, how many messages have managed to permeate thousands of years, thousands of miles, countless exiles, where the child in my right hand, underneath Yitzchak Avinu, my son, my only son, is also called Yitzchak. Like Abraham's only son, called Yitzchak. And the daughter in my left hand, right underneath the words Rivka Imenu, is also called Rivka. And I am holding in my hands the Jewish future, the destiny of the Jewish people. How do you communicate messages of that nature in a way that they permeate for so long? Ad campaigns manage to catch our appetite, catch our attention for a week, a month, a year. But how do you teach something that lasts forever? And I think that's the answer. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You don't teach it by teaching it. You teach it by living it. You know, Abraham is given a remarkable blessing in this week's parsha. Many of you have seen it before. It's one of the most famous blessings in the Torah. For I will bless you, and I will make your children as numerous like the stars in the heavens, and like the sea, the sand at the seashore. That's how many children you will have. And the question that I've always asked myself is, 1 second, we are not that many. We make up less than 1% of the world's population. What happened to God's blessing? That we will be like the stars in the heavens and like the sand on the earth. Innumerable. And some of the commentators give a beautiful idea, and they say that what God is talking about here is not a quantitative number, but a qualitative one. And we're very, very proud of talking about how many Jews have won Nobel Prizes. And we're very, very proud about talking about how many Jews are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. There's this weird thing. It's like, oh yeah, Facebook, yeah, he's Jewish. That's how we feel. Oh yeah, he's Jewish. She's Jewish. Yeah, she's Jewish. It's like, here's one I made earlier. Qualitative. So stars in the sky, we will shine. But then the follow-up is a big question. Because if that's what God was blessing him with, that we would be like stars, it's a little bit less glamorous to say that we're going to be like sand, right? So if you're talking numbers, I get the analogy. If you're not talking numbers, it's not that great an analogy, is it? Except that the answer is, Henny's home. The answer is the Tree of Life Synagogue. You see, in this verse, we're not blessed to be like the stars and the sand, like is mentioned in other places in the Torah. We're blessed with specific sand, the sand that sits right at the water's edge, because there's a fundamental difference between the sand everywhere else and the sand that sits at the water's edge. The sand at the water's edge, by water, is held together. And the blessing that Hashem gives Abraham is that your children will shine because they will be like the sand that sticks together. Did any of you check Saturday night if the Tree of Life Synagogue was Sephardic or Ashkenaz, or Yemenite or Hasidic or Reform? It wouldn't have occurred to you, would it? We're only good at figuring out how to build walls in times of peace, but in times of tragedy, of sorrow, those walls melt away. And we recognize, Kulam b'nei ish echad anachnu, we are all the sons of one man. And in those moments we shine so bright like the stars. Those stars are our destiny. When God takes Abraham and lifts him above the stars, he says, Ko yiyeh zaracha. This is what your children are going to be like. This is what we are like. When we came together in a Shabbaton where none of us would ever in a normal situation have spent together. We smashed down walls to be here. If I had told you 2 years ago, 5 years ago that you'd come and pay to spend Shabbat with a Hasidic guy. If I'd have told you in your Hasidic shtul that you were going to come and pay to spend Shabbat with people who might have their phones out here or there, what would you have said? But such is the nature of the Jewish heart. It finds its brother, it finds its sister, and binds itself to them, and cares for them, and loves for them. It's in our blood, and it's in our blood. We just need to stand together and shoot for these stars. You know, in the Torah, we're taught an amazing idea. And I want to share with you what this idea looks like in the form of a modern day story. A modern son of Abraham, son of Sarah. And that is what I hope that you leave this conference with. A decision to be a son of Abraham, a daughter of Sarah. Rav Shlomo Farhi was a great Rosh Yeshiva, a great rabbi. And he was giving a shmooze, a talk on the very first day of the yeshiva. And he told the boys about how important it was to actually have knowledge. We all want to be good Jews, but we need to know what Judaism is in order to be good Jews. We need to take the opportunity that Rav Chaim was talking about, to reach out, to learn on these one-on-ones, to take the opportunity to go on a destiny trip, to educate ourselves. We've got the feeling, we've got the bug, we've seen what it is. Now, let me learn about it. Let me know about it. Isn't that what we do? Once we see we like something, we engage, we make that decision, step across into something that's unknown to try it out. So Rav Shlomo says, he challenges the boys on the first day, I want you to finish this Masechta, this entire tractate of Talmud. And everyone is excited and everyone runs out. It's like dun 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 page bet dun dun page gimel dun dun grab the books dun dun. They're rocking through this. And there's one boy who's sitting in the back, and the Rosh Yeshiva can see he's depressed. He walks up to him and he says, "Is everything okay?" And the boy says, "Can I speak to you in your office, please?" Of course. The boy walks in and he says, "You know, you gave a talk and you talked about how important finishing the book is." And he says, yes, I did. And he says, "And you know that every word that you said, and the more you explain how important it was, the worse it hurt." And he says, "What do you mean?" He says, "All my friends are going to finish the Masechta, but I'm dyslexic and I can barely read. And there's no way in the world that I can do this thing that you said is so important. What about me? What am I supposed to do? What am I worth?" And if Shlomo was nothing if not a big heart, and he says, "You're right. Come see me tomorrow. I want to think about it." The boy leaves. He's so upset, humiliated. Now someone knows his secret. He comes back the next day, and Rav Shlomo has this big smile on his face. And he says, "I got you something." And he says, "What'd you get me, Rabbi?" And he gives him this gift-wrapped, like, portfolio. It looks like a kind of thin thing. He hands it to him. And the boy tears it open. And it's a beautiful leather-bound Gemara, beautiful leather-bound portion of Talmud, the one that they were studying. But listen what a son of Avraham is like. He had torn out all the pages of the Talmud except for page 1. And he bound it beautifully like a new Gemara. And he handed it to him and he said, "Here's your Masechta. Go finish it and make a siyum with us." Who does that? Maybe you and I would have said, "It'll be good enough whatever you do. Finish as much as you can." Who takes a page? Who goes to a leather binder? Who has it bound? A son of Avraham, who wants every single person, no matter what they look like, to feel like they're part of the gang. You know, it's great when you care about people who are like you. But that's not Abraham, and that's not Sarah. Abraham looks at a bunch of people, and what does he see? He sees 3 travelers. So much are they different from him. So far are they from his reality that what does Abraham say to them? He says, "Take a bit of water," not to drink, he's going to give them that in a minute. He says, "Take a bit of water, rinse your feet off." If anyone here is capable of reading the squiggly bits at the bottom called Rashi print, you will know that Rashi tells us, why was he telling them to wash their feet? Not because it was a spa, but because the people of the time worshipped the dust of the earth. So if they were people who worshipped idols, they had pagan beliefs, Avraham wanted them to rinse that off and come into his home. These are people who were diametrically opposed to Avraham. So how does Avraham run to do everything? Let's just remember, Avraham has just had a Brit Milah at the age of 99. Do you understand what that means to run? Besides, he's Jewish. Do you understand what that means to run? I've always wondered if you could have Uber with camels. There's regular Uber, which is a donkey. Uber XL, which is a camel. It's got 2 humps. I'm a very strange person. I don't know if you've noticed this. I always imagine, it's weird, I imagine these things in the Torah, but I imagine them kind of through like the way we think now. I've always imagined Adam in Gan Eden on J swipe, and he swipes and it's Chava, and he swipes and it's Chava, swipe, it's just Chava, Chava. Fine. I don't know why my head works this way. It's not like I try and think these things up. There's just, you know why Avraham runs to idol worshippers? Because Avraham is not a person who sees sinners or who sees negativity. Avraham is a person who sees potential. Abraham knows that while this is what it looks like, what I might actually be looking at is angels. And darn it, he was right. He was right, they were angels. Look at every Jew that way, no matter how different they are to you. Involve every single person. Abraham, it says, Vayashkem Abraham baboker, and Abraham woke up in the morning. He woke up not just regular, he woke up early in the morning. How many of you were at the first minyan? 3 people. Wow, so you must have had like a zimun. Sorry, from joke. Those should come with a warning. Zimun is the thing that you do when you make Birkat Hamazon. Sorry. Rabotai. Abraham wakes up early in the morning. But the funny thing about the Hebrew language is that it's different from all other languages. It's divine. In all the languages, the letters are actually just sounds. So A is A, B is Ba, C is Ka, whatever. All the sounds, right? Each sound, each letter is a sound. In Hebrew, letters are not so much sounds, but my best example for this is it's like they are elements. So as an example, glucose is made up, I wrote this down, of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. 2 hydrogen molecules to each one of carbon and oxygen, in case you were planning on doing that at the lunch table. Water is hydrogen and oxygen, but 2 hydrogen molecules to 1 oxygen molecule. The letters in Hebrew are like elements. And when you take a word that's spelled in Hebrew letters, that same word rearranged in another way is still the same definition, just seen from another facet. A couple of years ago I was speaking here and I gave an example, and I'll give it to you now as an example. The word for dream in English, in Hebrew, is Chalom, Chet, Lamed, Vav, Mem. It's the same letters that spell the word Lochem. Because if you want your dreams to come true, you need to fight for them. Lochem means to fight like a warrior. But the same letters also spell the word Mochel, which means to give up. Because in order to achieve those things, there's always something that you give up in order to achieve your dreams. So these different word combinations in Hebrew, actually, they're the same thing, because the letters are not sounds, they are elements. And if you mixed hydrogen, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, or 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogens, it's the same thing. It produces the same end goal. Vayashkem Avraham baboker, and Avraham woke up in the morning. The word baboker, morning, can mean morning, but it also means bikur, which means to check. Do you know how Avraham woke himself up? He woke himself up by checking himself out. He woke up at least 2 times in the parasha. There's 3 different times. A great study would be to understand why he does in each of them. But Abraham checks himself. Who am I? What kind of person am I? But I want to talk about one of those cases where Abraham prays for the people of Sodom. These are people who are, I can't even describe, they are so against Hachnasat Orchim, Abraham's favorite thing in the whole world, that when Lot's daughter welcomes in people and treats a poor man to a sandwich, they give her the death penalty. And the way that they give Lot's daughter this death penalty is they dip her into honey and hang her out so she will be stung to death by the bees. These are horrific people. But Abraham knows that maybe, just maybe, there's a way to get through to a closed heart. And Abraham prays. And a beautiful sentence is when Abraham wakes up in the morning and he goes out to the place where he had stood before God. And he looks out and he sees that there's already smoke coming up. What was so beautiful to me about this verse is, and Abraham prays again. He prayed yesterday and it didn't work. But Abraham checks himself and he says, is this the right thing or the wrong thing? It's not my job to get it done. It's my job to put in the effort. So Abraham wakes up in the morning, he checks himself and prays a second time. This, Rabotai, is what it means to be children of Abraham. We are looking now at a response in my head to this heinous crime. We all want to do something, don't we? Don't we? Yes. What should we do? Should we go on Facebook and post about anti-Semitism? That's going to be so helpful. Like at least 12 people are going to like it. So now the world is different. What are we going to do? In my opinion, there is only one answer in every single time, in every single case to terror. The answer is to show terror that you are not afraid. If we went to shul once last year, go to shul twice this year. Double your output. If you were learning less before, learn more now. We will not be cowed into not being Jews ever again. I became the rabbi just recently of the Safra Synagogue in Manhattan. And we did the Simchat Torah celebrations. There were so many people that we had to do them on the street in front of the synagogue. And while we're dancing in the street with, I think it was nearly 1,000 people, we're dancing with the Torahs in the street, I stood up on a chair and I said, can I just direct your attention to what it is that we are living right now? My father escaped from Syria when he was 17 years old because he could not be a Jew in the streets of Syria. He was shot in the head with a slingshot, point blank, a rock to the head, and he has a scar that is there to this day. My mother is the daughter of a Holocaust survivor who at the age of 8 had his door kicked down in Bonn in Germany on Kristallnacht, who escaped with their very lives to this land, to the land of America. We are runners. And I said to the people there, and now we are celebrating Simchat Torah in between 5th Avenue and Madison Avenue, a block away from Central Park. Look at where we are. Look at what we have. And I wonder now, when they shoot at a shul, was I right? Or was I wrong? Was I right? Or was I wrong? And I think that the answer is the following. It will never matter if you shoot at us. It will never matter if you come at us. It will never matter if you try to exterminate us, if you try to gas us, or kill us, or hang us, or burn us. We will overcome. That is who we are. Do you feel that? Can you feel that? From Abraham himself, who's thrown in a furnace of fire and survives, to a group of people who were then made slaves, who wander through the desert till they get home. We are finally here at the time of Mashiach. He's knocking on our door. And whether or not they shoot, we are no longer afraid. That's the answer. We might die. We may have died. But we are not afraid. And we will not be cowed. And we will go to shul. And we will call people to learn with us. And we will get on planes to go to Israel. And we will learn more and spread more. Try and stop us. Try. You will fail like everyone before you. The Malbim writes, echoed in the Kli Yakar, that we are called the sand at the seashore for one more reason, because it is that sand that is pounded by wave after wave after wave of anti-Semitism, of persecution, of hatred. And yet, Every wave thinks it will flood the earth, but invariably they disappear back into the ocean, and no one remembers their name. Yimach Shemam. So I beg you, I plead with you, this inspiration that you've taken today, this whole weekend, it is fuel. Use it to power your revolution. Use it to give strength to the people around you. Use it to create your own sense of community like we have done here. Invite people to your home for Shabbat. And if you don't know enough, like Rav Noach used to say, oh, I miss him so much. We don't think we're teachers, do we? Rav Noach used to say, if I know Aleph and you know Bet, I have news for you, my friend. We are both teachers. Take what you've learned. Learn more. Share it. Light this fire everywhere. Make sure that they know that we are not going anywhere. That is the mission that we are charged with by this weekend. Project Inspire may have started with a couple people here or there, but now it is everywhere. It is a movement. JWRP, it's a movement, and it's a movement because of you. It used to be that it was leaders that decided policy for the future, but today we don't live in that generation anymore. Obama became president because of what? Because of grassroots. Trump became president because of what? Grassroots. The time of Mashiach is a time of rabbis, but not rabbis alone. Of teachers, but not teachers alone. It's a time where each and every one of us picks up the flag and runs for the goal line. It has been an honor and a privilege to be here with you. I am humbled by what they have managed to achieve here. And I pray in the blessings that we are told in our Torah, Yosef Amonai Alechem Kachem, may God increase upon your numbers, Kachem, like you, Elef Pe'amim, 1,000 times over. And may He bless you with all the blessings that were given to Abraham's children, because you indeed are fulfilling that role, are playing that part, the part of the children of Abraham and Sarah.